for me, values and or culture in a company needs to be driven by values. There needs to be tangible values. We need to be like value-led companies. We need to be managers that are value-led. So having a culture of values is very, very important, and speaking out those values, living those values and communicating values. And every company has like different values that need to be adapted to the business model, to the market, but it's important to have those values. The second thing that defines the culture and also our culture at OYO is the culture of empathy and the human element. Empathy means we need to embrace our team, our people, our employees in the same way as we embrace customers and partners and whoever we're working for and providing services for. So the human element, the empathy, the understanding of human beings is an important factor of culture as well. And then last but not least, and that goes in line obviously with the human element and the empathy, we need to drive cultures of diversity. Diversity in terms of every aspect that is surrounding us, diversity in opinions, diversity in terms of different cultural backgrounds, diversity in terms of professions, in terms of functions and functional expertise. And hence, for me personally, and that's also what we're now bringing into the OYO business in Latin America, these are the three main cornerstones of what defines culture, which is values, which is empathy, and it is diversity.
Nice. The second question I will ask for you too. BREX and OYO now are large companies. What do they still have in common with the startups? Larissa, can you start, please?
Yeah, so the audio is a little tricky for us. The question is what we have in common with large companies and what we have in common with startups, right? If I understood correctly.
Yeah.
I would say in terms of large companies, like from the very beginning, we almost run BREX like a public company in the sense that we've been audited since our very first year, right? We are a financial company, so we take that very seriously. We have all of our numbers monthly internally, so from customer acquisition cost to our, margins very well tracked, and every single expense that we have, everything very well tracked, everything very well documented since the very beginning, which, as we raise kind of like new rounds, as we bring more investors on board, and eventually right down the line, as we either go public or whatever, is very, very important to have that really organized and really clean from the beginning. That's something we take really seriously. We've hired some people that worked many years, let's say at Citibank and large companies like that, and they were very, impressed at how we organize things. So something we're very proud of. I would say, what we have in common with startups is we move very fast. We do move very fast, and we are not afraid of doing things differently. So just as one concrete example, we just announced a couple weeks ago that we are going fully remote. Like that will be a remote first company from now on. And that's one example of kind of like a bold move that we took to adapt to how the world is kind of being run today.
Okay. And Half, about it.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with what Larissa said as well, and I can echo that. I think just to add to that, as a large company or as a growing company, you always need to keep on being a startup. You don't, or you shouldn't lose that mentality of being a startup, because what does it mean to be a startup? It means to be constantly iterating on what you're doing, questioning every single step that you're taking, waking up in the morning and almost breaking your head around, are we still on the right track? Are we doing the right thing? Listening to your customers, listening to your own employees, and constantly thinking about the best way to adjust. And I think the whole COVID situation that we are seeing, that all of us are experiencing, that hit us by surprise, forces us to be more of a startup and more in a startup type of mentality, because we have to adjust, we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to, in the case of OYO, for instance, look into a hyper sanitization program that we are running to now make sure that every single stay at an OYO property is as secure, as safe as ever possible. So I think what we have in common with the startup world is the constant thinking, the constant iteration, it's the speed of execution, it's the listening to your customer and your own people type of approach. And I think that is something that you as a company should never lose and keep on having in place.
Lorenzo, you are the first employee at at BREX. What are what changed in terms of culture since when you entered?
What we have changed in terms of culture?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say we change as much as we evolved. We started thinking more actively about our culture when we were around 15, 20 people. We got everyone in the room. Everyone got to kind of describe in 3 words what the BREX culture was, what we aspired to be. We came up with some values like dreaming big, owner's mentality, which was influenced from some of our investors at 3G Capital. We had some values of our own, like being a fixer, which means pushing beyond reason to get something done, and not like giving in to excuses or to the barriers that are so prevalent in the startup life. We, as we say, seek truth, which is this importance of understanding an issue very deeply as we are solving it or as we're trying to do it differently. And then the values evolved in the way that we kind of filter for these values and the way that we recognize people who are value promoters also evolved. So for example, we developed a full interview stage as we are recruiting and bringing people on board that test for our values. And we make sure that we're very consistent. Like, so sometimes we're running to a very impressive candidate, but if they're not a cultural fit, we understand that we can't bring that person on board. We came up with different ways to not only recognize but continue to promote our values as we went from that first 15 people group to now over 500 employees.
Involved with different companies since the inception to become a unicorn too. How do these companies maintain the efficiency and the flexibility when they are growing and when they are growing fast?
How do you want to go first?
Yeah, no, I can go first. And I was, unfortunately, the line was a little bit cut off, but I think I got your question. But just to repeat, you've asked that having been involved with different companies since inception to then get to
the unicorn, yeah, to the unicorn level, how to maintain this capacity of the flexibility and efficiency.
Yeah, exactly. So indeed, I mean, I've been over the last 20 years involved with several companies that we brought from inception to unicorn status. And as I said before, one of the basically key areas of success is to always live the key fundamentals of being a startup, which is the iteration, which is the speed of execution, which is the empathy, which is driving values and culture in a company. But in a growing organization, what you have to do is your efforts and your ability to communicate need to increase as well. You need to communicate even more externally and internally. So communication becomes like a key aspect, not to lose the startup mentality and making sure everyone is being heard and that everyone is hearing you. The other thing is that obviously in a growing organization, you have to start setting up certain processes and a certain structure, but making sure that those structures and processes stay as agile as possible and that you iterate on those processes. Processes have to exist, the structure has to exist. But again, you need to live that. It's a living thing, it's an evolving thing. And most importantly, what is driving and helping to maintain flexibility and efficiency, and yeah, overall like focus on the right things. It comes always down to having the right people. It always comes down to having the right team. And hence, in a growing organization, apart from basically exposing culture even more, communicating in an even stronger and more frequent way, it is always like finding the right people, coaching the right people, developing your people into the right direction. So it keeps on being a very people-centric question. Hence, there's no technicality around it. There's no mechanism around it. But as a founder, as a CEO, as a management team, the maximum and biggest priority that you have to have in order to basically maintain the startup vibe and maintain the values of innovation is to focus on your people, on bringing in the right people, on leading your people, on managing your people, on embracing your people, and on developing them further.
I agree.
Larissa,
I agree.
would like to add something?
No, I would second half here. You know, bringing in the right people and people who are aligned with your values. That's really important to ensure we're all going in the same direction, in the right direction.
About team, we'll talk about persons here, not people. What do you think about the same team, the right team to growth and the expansion of startups, or we need to change the founding team to grow and expand expand the startup? What do you think, Half?
No, I think for me and learning from the past entrepreneurial experiences and from having built different type of businesses, for me, building the right team and building the right organization is a little bit like a jigsaw. It's a little bit like a jigsaw puzzle, right? You have like different jigsaw pieces, and it's all about bringing them together in the right way. And in a growing organization, the jigsaw puzzle becomes bigger and you need more. But you need to basically complement each of those different pieces to give the complete picture and to be successful. And what we have seen is that it's not a question so much of, is the founding team the right team to scale the company to like different levels? It's always a question of finding the right complements. So as long as you as the founding team or as the management team keep on complementing yourself throughout the journey with those that like add to that picture that you need, as long as you're doing that, you can with the same founding team keep on being very, very successful. So I believe pretty much that future organizations are organizations that are not very hierarchy driven, like in traditional companies, where there is just one person calling the shots and taking the decisions. I'm thinking that the success of future companies in a more complex world, in a more complex environment that we're living, is being driven rather by like, yeah, strong teams that work together as a jigsaw puzzle, that are on eye level, that are complementing themselves, that are challenging themselves. So I believe much more than in the so-called like tribe-based type of management, and don't misinterpret the tribe thinking in a very esoteric way. The tribe thinking is finding the right people that are all working on eye level, that are respecting themselves, that are challenging themselves, that help to develop themselves, and that together find the right answers for a more and more complex world, and also more and more complex business challenges.
So are we facing this dilemma inside BREX now?
Do you mind just repeating the question? The audio is a little tricky for us.
Okay, I'm asking about is the same team, the founding team is the right team to expand the startup, to grow the startup?
Oh, so I mean, yes, and but not only the founding team, right? So one of the things that I attribute BREX's fast growth to is our focus to bring a very, very talented executive team from the beginning. So, you know, one of the things that we did early on, and that took a very long time, to be able to bring these people on board was to focus on like top executives for two areas that were key for us. One was compliance and the other one was finance. So we were people, Enrique, Pedro, right, the co-founders, and myself. And we brought Michael Tenenbaum, who's our CFO, on board. He was the chief revenue officer at another at a very big fintech, you might know, SoFi, and took a lot of time to convince him to come. And obviously, in this early team, you kind of have to do give a little bit more equity, and we took advantage of our advisors network and our investors network to help bring him on board, and bring Vince Kogan as well, who came on the compliance side as our general counsel. And Vince, what Michael and Vince had in common, which is a trait that we continue to replicate as we expand our team, and especially our executive team, is that both of them had experience scaling a crucial part of a successful company from the startup stage to the scale stage. Michael did that in SoFi as chief revenue officer. Vince did that for compliance for a company like Stripe. That worked really well. I think that helped us skip many steps. They knew what hires to bring on board first to develop those organizations. And they set the bar for talent for everyone that we were bringing in. And this is a formula that we continue to replicate in our executive team for privacy, for operations, for sales. And so, yes, like the founding team remains strong, but we would not have done what we did if we weren't for these new people that we were able to bring on board as we grew.
Nice. People, we have an audio problem, audio issue, so I will speak more slower than now. If you
Better
don't
now, thank you guys.
okay, if you don't understand, please let me know, okay? Larissa, again with you. BREX is solving a globally common issue, but with different cultures of use. And the founders are Brazilian and venturing in another country. How to keep these mixed ingredients to working together to grow fast?
Great question. So, what you described is accurate, but it's not the full extent of our internationality, if you will. Our team comes from 34 different countries. We used to have, when we were in our office before the pandemic, all over 30 flags displayed in our wall. We definitely see this diversity and this pool of different perspectives as an advantage. I would say that, and yes, like these people are coming from like very different backgrounds, but as long as you cultivate a strong company culture, and as long as you keep that, that culture consistent across the board, and you celebrate it and you enforce it, you can still have people from the most various backgrounds united by some core values and with a common purpose. So that's how we bring that unity at BREX.
Nice. Half, a question for you now. What have been lessons learned in terms of managing culture when going outside the country of the origin of the startups? What has been the experience that we have now with OYO coming to Latin America?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Everson. So I think if you go outside of your country of origin, it starts to become a complement. You need to combine the local considerations, the local specifics with the values that you're also driving centrally. It's neither one nor the other. So it's not potentially the right thing to do to just embrace only the culture of like any single country that you're evolving to and that you're expanding into. And it's also not the right thing to do to just embrace basically values that you consider the right ones from your country of origin. It starts to become like a complement. And you have to be very, very respectful, very sensitive, very, as we said before, of a high empathetic value to understand people, their considerations, to understand the customers, the values and the requirements attached to that. And then you need to make it like a combined value proposition and a combined cultural proposition. And at the end of the day, and we keep on coming back to the same subject, it's all a question of finding the right people. And you have to find the right people that embrace local culture and the local specifics in the right way. And be it at Delivery Hero or be it at what we're doing now with OYO, you need to iterate on finding the right balance between what are the decisions that you're driving centrally, what are the decisions that you're driving locally, how much do you empower either side of the equation, and at the end of the day, make it a collaboration of both. I'm not believing that for the majority of business model that a centralized operation where people just sit behind a desk in Silicon Valley and try to conquer the whole world, right, with a standardized approach will be the solution for all the problems in the future. Again, it depends on the business model. I really believe that it's a combination of a team that tries to aggregate processes, product thinking, and certain other parts of the business in the most efficient and in a certain centralized way, while always combining it with a strong local appreciation and with a strong team on the ground. And the key to success also for a company like Delivery Hero, which is now the largest food delivery company globally, operating in more than 30 markets, has always been to hire local teams or to work with local teams, with local founders that we consider strong, that we consider knowledgeable about the local market, and that always basically challenge the central team's operations by embracing, adjusting, and creating the right sensitivity for the respective product proposition in the respective market. So I think at the end of the day, and in the future for both business models, for most business models, maybe not for all of them, it's not anymore having like one size fits it all, one product fits it all, but it's a combination of different product proposition and adjustments. And it's a little bit like the United Nations of a certain product. So yeah, as Larissa and BREX would expand internationally, which hopefully they will do at one point of time, they need to call it like the United Nations of BREX, because in every single country, they will potentially find a different slight iteration of the product in order to make it successful.
I like that term.
Oh, nice. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We talk about a lot about people since the beginning of the panel. Now I would like to make a question for you both about the people. Now, how to hire the exactly people during the expansion and the scale mode with without losing the culture the culture or the culture of the company.
Go first.
Larissa, you can go first, please.
Okay. So we, defining the culture is definitely the first step. In our case, we have like a entire screening part of our interview process dedicated to our values. So, I'll give an example. There's this value that I like a lot called be a fixer, which is someone that finds a way and is a hustler and don't kind of give into the excuses, as I mentioned before. This is one of my favorite values at BREX because it's the value that gets things done. And we have this question, which is, as one example, tell us about a time when the actions you took to accomplish something were significantly blocked, but you kept pushing beyond reason. And what was your mindset on, right? What was going through your mind? What was important for you at the time? What were you worried about? And then finally, were you able to accomplish what were you trying? What did you learn? And how can you replicate that learning in different things that you do, in different projects you're involved? And we screen for that. And then once people are in, the battle is not over yet, right? Because the company is growing, people are involved in different projects, they're working in different teams, managed by different people. How can we make sure the culture stays strong and stays consistent, as I kept mentioning the word consistent in this panel. So what we do is we have something, one of the things that we do, in my opinion, the strongest, we have this thing called all hands meeting, which is every Thursday we get together, now on Zoom, used to be at our cafeteria, and we go over updates, we go over wins, we go over challenges that we're overcoming together, just a general update on the state of the union, if you will. And we start that presentation with our 5 values. Dream big, owner's mentality, be a fixer, seek truth, and customer focus, which is our North Star. And we end that presentation with a culture point slide. So recognizing one person in that company that week stood out in one of our values. And, you know, not only which value and what person it was, but what was the specific action that led them to be a highlight that week. And I think that's a way to not only continue to remind everyone, right? We have like around 10 or so people coming in every other week. And so that's a way to not only remind everyone of our values, but also to continue to show them in practice in the different activities and the different projects that we work on every day as BREX. So this is one of the ways that we you know, do that.
Before half a curiosity, Larissa, what time do you make the meetings with third flags different?
That's a good question. They used to be on Wednesday at noon Pacific time, so California time, and then that's 3 p.m. New York. And then we just moved it to 1 p.m. on Thursdays. So we're always trying to accommodate the most people, right? But with 500, it's impossible not to have some conflicts here and there. So although we, you know, strongly encourage everyone to be there live, because it's such a strong sense of like belonging that brings. We also record the meetings, and so if people had some sort of strenuous circumstance, they can watch it later, like I've done many times before.
Good. Half, what's your advice for hiring during the expansion and the scale?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, and as I said earlier, it keeps on being a jigsaw puzzle, right? Hiring. So hiring, whatever the stage of the company is, if it's like a startup stage, or is it in growth and scale up stage, you always have to think about it as a jigsaw puzzle. So you always have to complement. You always have to complement what's there. And the only thing that changes as the company grows and as the company evolves is that the size of the puzzle, of the jigsaw puzzle, gets bigger. But you should always look into finding complementary fit to the skills that you have, and not only complementary fit in terms of the skill set, but also in terms of like every individual team that you're trying to scale. It needs to fit in, not only from a functional perspective, not only functionally complementary, but you also have to find like the interconnections, which is something that has to do with how do people get along, like from a personal perspective. So think about it as a jigsaw puzzle. The second thing is hire by values and not hire by CV. It's a little bit like getting into a relationship or getting into a partnership. You fall in love with someone and build a relationship not because of a Harvard MBA, right? You fall in love because you share values with someone. You get along with someone. You feel passionate and committed towards someone. And these are actually like the same attributes that make a successful team. You have to find a common ground in terms of the passion, in terms of the commitment, in terms of the values. And it's an emotional decision as well. It's an emotional decision to say, who do I want to work with? Who do I want to commit to for many, many years to come, for a large part of the lifetime? And we have always found in all the companies that we have built that if there is commonality in terms of the values that you share, if everyone commits equally to that vision that you have, If everyone is able to work in a team and complement others that you have in the team, that's the most important part. So to the extent possible, I'm always trying to not hire based on certain CVs and certain mechanics that are there. Hiring is not a checkbox type of process. Hiring is building a relationship. And if you need to hire 100 people, you need to build a relationship with those 100 people, and you need to be sure that they can also build that type of relationship with you. So I find like that analogy quite strongly to like how we are establishing friends, how we're getting into relationships ourselves, and the same type of bonding needs to exist in a company as well, just obviously for different motivation and for different aspects. And it needs to be highly diverse. And in a growing organization, diversity, embracing diversity and living diversity becomes maybe more challenging. As you're growing, as you need to hire very, very fast. But even if you have the need to hire fast and to bring in people at a much faster speed than ever before, you should never, ever lose the ambition and the need and the requirement to have a team that is as diverse as possible in terms of opinion, in terms of cultural background, in terms of gender, in terms of experience and age. And that drives, at the end of the day, keeps on driving a very, very strong and a very powerful and sustainable culture.
Yeah, and that's just a quick parenthesis, if that's okay with everyone. Half, like you talked about the importance of building relationships, and I very much agree with that. That's what, you know, make people work together really well, generate that sense of empathy that's so important, and bring that sense of belonging that's so important in team building. What are some ways that you think building those relationships can be effective in a remote world, which is what we are doing today? Do you have any special tips or discoveries on what works really well for building relationships in the work from home world?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Larissa, and maybe there's not a perfect answer to that, and we need to figure that out. And I would love to hear and love to stay in touch and keep on hearing your opinion about it, as we're both trying to find ways how to work remotely. What I found is, at least one of the things that I found to be like useful, it is the over communication, and it becomes a bigger effort. So if you're all sitting together in a certain office environment, a lot of the talks evolve naturally, because you're passing by colleagues, you're going for lunch or dinner together, and that is currently obviously to a certain extent restricted. So what I found is you have to force yourself to communicate to people even more. So you have to do like those interactions that you're usually doing with your direct reports, the one-on-ones that you're having, you just have to do much more of that and over communicate and leave space for everyone surrounding you to address their questions, not having it ultimately as a monologue, which is difficult, obviously, as you like to basically talk to people in a proactive way. But like most importantly, it needs to be resolved by, let's say, over communication, and especially for the managers, by certain discipline to keep on reaching out proactively to everyone that is surrounding them, being in touch, being in a listening mode, to also listen not only to people's professional concerns, but also to listen to their personal considerations and personal concerns, because we're all living now in an environment where the personal considerations and the personal concerns that all of us have around like the health of the family and being underneath one roof with your partner, your kids, and whoever that is, presents new challenges that people have to deal with and that we should listen to. So we should have nowadays even more empathy and even be more acknowledging and listening to the personal thoughts, problems, issues of our people that are surrounding us, and really position ourselves much more as a friend than only a colleague, much more as a partner than only a business professional. And I think, again, we're iterating on that as well, and we need to all figure out the right way to address that, to keep and live a culture in a remote world. So let's have let's continue some brainstorming around it and share experiences going forward.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Larissa. Guys, I need to make just one question about the pandemic for you two. So I would like to know what has been your most valuable lessons during the pandemic.
Yeah, I can start. So, obviously, this is more an obvious than a lesson per se, but making sure that our customers and our employees are safe and supported. That's like number one priority. I would say in terms of lessons that we learned are that as we make remote work, a lot of people and a lot of companies, and ourselves included in the beginning, were trying to clone the office into the online world. So trying to get what used to work in an office environment and replicate it in Zoom, right? Or whatever tool we're using for this remote interaction. And that's not how we think we should be thinking about this. Um, I'll explain why. So for example, happy hours used to work and they were great for, you got to connect with people that you don't really sit next to, and you got to catch up, and that brings more of that like team spirit and camaraderie that's so important. There's nothing more sad than like a happy hour on Zoom and everyone's just staring at each other, and they're afraid of like speaking over each other, and they don't want to carry those like same one-on-one conversations that they would. So I don't think we should be trying to get what used to work in the office and bringing it to the online world. Instead, we observed that a lot of the issues that we are concerned about in the remote world, like how do we foster a sense of belonging, how do we deliver content in a way that is just as efficient as these like in-person interactions, these things were already solved in many corners of the internet, right? So think about YouTubers. They brought this amazing sense of belonging and following base with people that never really met them in person. And gaming communities created this whole, and they have these whole forums and ways that people are working together and they're in the same team without even having really heard each other's voices. They're all like on chat and on all these other forms of communication. So we've been looking a lot more at what are, aspects that we need to figure out to make remote work that the internet already solved. And we're trying to bring that to the context of a company instead. I think that's our biggest lesson. Half.
Yeah, maybe just to add, I think the biggest learning for me personally throughout the pandemic has been how important the human element is. Potentially all of you recall being quarantined, not being able to go out or being restricted. We've been seeking to be in touch with people. Larissa mentioned these, let's say, Zoom calls that we're doing, and the, like, I don't know, Friday evening, Saturday evening type of, let's say, Zoom gatherings. So I think we learned throughout the pandemic, at least me personally and those people that are surrounding me, how important the human element is. That we as human beings, we need other human beings to be happy, to be successful. I think for me also personally, when it comes to the professional world, it gave me another big emphasis, another big push, another big encouragement and motivation to really embrace what we're doing with the teams, how important it is to work with people, to appreciate people, to listen to people, to be there for people, to be giving than only receiving. And also when it comes to like product propositions, to really adjust the services and products that we're building for customers in an even more customer-centric and experience-driven way, to have more sensitivities for what people believe, for what they think and what they need. So I think for me, the whole pandemic and the whole situation was a big call out for humanism, yeah, for how important human values are. And it has driven me to be culturally even more empathy-driven, value-driven, diversity-driven, and making sure that we're having teams and businesses that are as closely working together as possible, and that are breaking their heads really to provide services and products that are not only being liked by customers, but that are loved by customers because of having found the right sensitivities. And it gives us obviously the opportunities to come together in new formats and build personal relationships, not only by seeing each other, but by also meeting via Zoom. I think this forum and this conference is the perfect example for that. Yeah, looking forward to more interactions in that format.
Great. Larissa and Ralph, we're going now to close the panel as the last question. So I'd like to ask you if you have any advice, a special advice for the companies that are growing now. You have any advice, any special advice to building a strong culture since day one?
Yes, 100%. And just a small correction on my previous answer, I meant to use the word boring. Like there's nothing more boring than a virtual happy hour. But anyways, I think that, you know, when building a culture, especially as a small company, know that it takes time, right? And it takes being intentional about it. It's not just writing it on the wall and expecting that everyone will follow it. You need to be intentional on your interactions when you're building your culture, intentional about how you are repeating that culture and living that culture and observing yourselves to see if that culture matches what you actually are and what you actually strive to be as a company. Know that there's not one single type of culture that works, right? So if you go look at Google and look at Amazon, they're dramatically different companies, but they're both incredible companies. And as you know, whatever you end up setting as your culture with your team, make sure that that is really authentic and that's really consistent across the board. You don't want to go to a scenario where different teams within the company have different cultures. You want to unify that.
Ralph?
Yeah, I fully agree to what Larissa said. Maybe just to complement 3 or 4 advices from my view. The first one is be brave. Don't be afraid. The biggest basically reason of failure of certain companies or individuals is that they just don't execute. Just do it, right? Whatever idea you have, try out. And very, very often trying things out, then running extensive business plans and business cases is the key to success. So be brave, be bold, and try, because this world is getting more disrupted over the next 10 years than over the last 50 years, most likely. The second thing is focus on the team and focus on the people, and be always like a very, very people-focused organization. People come always first, before everything else, before any numbers, before any structural considerations, always 100% people focus. And then operate a company that is value-driven, value and culture-driven, and not number-driven. The numbers are results. The input is value and culture and people. The result is disruption, is financial success, and is a certain element, obviously, of pride and of fame. But those are the 3 things: be brave, focus on people, and be value and culture driven.
Thank you so much, guys. Larissa, Ralph, thank you for your time. It was an amazing experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thanks a lot, Everson and team. Yeah, nice to meet you all.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.